Hey everybody, what's going on? Maxx here with another Master Duel video for y'all. So today we're going to be taking another look at Swordsoul Tenyi, and we're actually looking at Swordsoul Tenyi for a fairly specific reason, or at least a reason beyond I just wanted to play more of this deck. I'm actually playing more of this deck because it's one I'm considering using for some tournament play. Relatively recently, a couple of days ago at the time of recording this video, we actually had announced the Master Circuit series, and I'm pretty excited to be playing in a tournament scene that's, kind of exclusive to North American players, because, when I saw the Europe announcement, I was like, oh, that's so cool. I wish we had something like that, and now we do. So I'm definitely going to be planning on entering, honestly, as many of those tournaments as it takes until I top, because it's been a long time since I've played in Yu-Gi-Oh! Tournaments, and I'd very much like to get back into that scene. Now, there has always been, of course, like the Master Duel meta tournaments, but like, the timing of those doesn't always work out with my schedule, and it's like, I don't want to do those like every single week, but something like this where there's, further big tournaments and good price support, I'm definitely down for. So I'm very, very, very gracious to all those who are hosting this tournament series, and I'm very much looking forward to playing in it. So like I said, in this most recent one coming up here at the beginning of February, I'm actually considering taking Swordsoul Tenyi as my deck. One of the reasons I'm considering taking it is because not only is it a good and consistent deck, but it's one I'm very familiar with. This deck, as I've mentioned many times before, has gone mostly unchanged in the, almost like 7 months now. Actually, over 7 months. Actually, well over 7 months. Almost 8, right? Almost 8 months that it's been in Master Duel. It's gone relatively unchanged, so I've got a lot of practice in with it already, and I'm already very familiar with all, not necessarily all, but, the vast majority of the lines that you would reasonably expect to go into. So as far as the precise build, that's kind of where I've been going a bit more back and forth. One of the main things I've been going back and forth on, more than actually the main thing I've been going back and forth on, is including desires. I'm trying to decide if I really want desires in the deck, or if I'd rather just have one of the things I was considering, or two of the cards that I was considering replacing the two desires for were a third Ecclesia and a third Imperm. And I have actually, I'm trying to remember if it was the last iteration or the one before we were playing 3 desires, but relatively recently I did actually cut one of the desires to make room for the Feather Duster. So normally I kind of go back and forth between playing Nibiru or Feather Duster. I actually want both, especially if I'm going to be playing in a tournament scene. Would definitely like to have both Nibiru and Feather Duster in my main deck. The Swiss portion of the tournament is going to be best of one, so I think it's best to be prepared to face just about anything. And I also think this particular spread of Swordsoul is pretty well poised to do that. It's pretty well poised to take on just about any reasonable meta threat here. I'm not really playing anything particularly special, and I think that's fine. I think, I was tempted to maybe tech something for Math Mech, but honestly, I feel like a tech, especially against a specific deck, even if it is, one that you expect to be played a lot, is ultimately going to hurt more than help. So I just try to keep the deck relatively general, but again, still well poised within the meta here. So if you have any suggestions, especially those of you who are more experienced with tournament play, definitely let me know in the comments. Especially those of you who are used to playing Swordsoul Tenyi in a best of 3 format. I'm definitely working on putting together a side deck for this deck, and I might not even play Sword-Souls, I'm not sure yet. I've also definitely been considering Math Mech among 1 or 2 other decks as well, but Swordsoul does seem like a pretty decent contender from the decks I've been looking at. So if you've got some experience with Swordsoul Tenyi side decks, definitely let me know about that in the comments below as well. I'd be very interested to learn. So these games that we're going to take a look at are from my kind of practice session, or sessions rather. I think these games kind of come from multiple days of play. I know I've been playing Swordsoul Tenyi for multiple days anyway, just trying to get more and more accustomed to the deck and see how I feel about it in this current metascape. So let's go ahead and break it down card by card, as we always do, and then after that we'll take a look at some of these games. So in this build, we're playing 1 Effect Failure, 2 Tenyi Spirirt Adhara, 3 Maxx, 3 Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, 1 Tenyi Spirirt Shthana, 3 Swordsoul of Mo Ye, 2 Swordsoul of Taia, 2 Incredible Ecclesia, the Virtuous, 2 Swordsoul Strategist Longyuan, 2 Tenyi Spirirt Vishuda, 3 Tenyi Spirirt Ashuna, 1 Nibiru the Primal Being, 1 Archnemesis Protos, 1 Harpie's Feather Duster, 2 Pot of Desires, 3 Swordsoul Emergence, 2 Called by the Grave, 1 Crossout Designator, 2 Heavenly Dragon Circle, 2 Infinite Impermanence, and then a Swordsoul Blackout. That's going to be the main deck. Now for the extra deck, we're playing 1 Yazi, Evil of the Yang Zing, 2 Baxia, Brightness of the Yang Zing, 1 Draco Berserker of the Tenyi, 1 Adamancipator Risen Dragite, 2 Swordsoul Grandmaster Qi Xiao, 1 Chao Feng, Phantom of the Yang Zing, 1 Baronne de Fluer, 1 Swordsoul Supreme Sovereign Cheng Ying, 1 Swordsoul Sinister Sovereign Qixing Longyuan, 3 Monk of the Tenyi, and then finally 1 Shaman of the Tenyi. So there is the build. Now let's look at some gameplay. So the first duel that we're going to take a look at here is against Tri-Brigade Lyrilusc, which is not too terribly common to see it, but it's not uncommon necessarily either. Looks like we're going to be taking the second turn here. And we have Maxx and Ecclesia, so I'm pretty satisfied with this opening hand. We also have a Longyuan too, actually a live one, so it looks like they're going to start off with a Tri-Brigade Fractal. That's fine. I'm going to let this whole kind of chain resolve. I'll let them do the Nerval search, and sure enough, they're actually going to be getting a Chaos here. So I'm feeling pretty good about this Maxx. I'm just going to fire it off in response to the Chaos. Now, I definitely did note as it was being discarded that my opponent discarded a Barrel Canary. We want to make sure, of course, as always as ever, that we're looking not only at the cards our opponent's playing, but that they're discarding too. So as soon as I saw Barrel Canary, I was like, okay, it's Tri-Brigade Lyrilusc specifically. Now my opponent does have an Ash Blossom for the, the Maxx, so that's a little disappointing, but given my opponent's hand and with a discard, I figure, okay, they probably can't do like the full combo, so I might be good here. They do actually get the Symbolic Bird of Sovereignty out, so I will have to deal with the Apex Avian. And much to my horror, they actually do have a Sapphire Swallow and another level 1 bird. So, joke's on me, they actually do have the full combo here. Alright, next up is the Starling for the Cobalt Sparrow. Then I'm going to link those off for the, the Tri-Brigade Farigite. Oh, I can't believe I forgot Farigite's name. Oh, sad day is the day that I forget a Tri-Brigade monster's name, but using Farigite, they can special the Cobalt Sparrow and then go to Celestine, and yeah, it's definitely looking worse for me than I originally anticipated, but I think it should be fine. And then when I saw this Union Carrier, though, I was like, no, wait a second, are they? And they are. They're actually going for the Apex Avian quote-unquote lock. So the way that this works is, the idea is that you've got, your Mist Valley Apex Avian. We're all used to this card between Tri-Brigade Lyrilusc and Flunders. We've probably all, had this card dropped at us at one point or other. But we may not have had dropped on you alongside it is the Mist Valley Thunderbird. Now, when this card is returned to the hand, it immediately special summons itself back to the field. That's a mandatory effect, by the way, not an optional one. But yeah, it's going to immediately summon itself back. So basically the idea is that you just get 1 Omni Negate per chain as long as you have Apex Avian plus the Thunderbird out. So that's definitely not good for me. But, I'm looking at my hand, I'm like, okay, I think I might actually have outs for this. Honestly, sorry, I have something, there we go. Honestly, I'm most interested in my Maxx here, because I'm thinking to myself, okay, they can negate 1 effect per chain, but if I activate an effect and they chain the Apex Avian effect, then I can chain Maxx, and then they won't be able to negate it. Then, moving forward, I get a draw every time they negate this turn. Now, I'm thinking to myself, like, I don't really know what I'm going to top deck here to get out of this, but I'm going to have to top deck something, and this is going to be the best way, the only way I'm going to be able to do it, so this is how I'm going to do it. And then I realized, wait a second, when the Thunderbird is special summoned, it's not going to be in the spell trap zone, it's going to special summon, it's going to come out as a monster. And I've definitely got this Ecclesia in my hand that could just run over it, among many other things. So here, actually, I decided to, before trying to summon Ecclesia, I was like, well, let me try to special summon this Vishuda, and let me see if it actually manages to go through. Even if it goes to graveyard, that's fine, whatever, I'll just, use this effect from grave later. But my opponent actually lets the summon through, which is pretty surprising to me. What's the Obi-Wan Kenobi meme, right? A surprise to be sure, but a welcome one. So I'm like, yeah, I'll just go ahead and battle over your Thunderbird, that's fine. So now in main phase 2, I can go ahead and just link this off for a Monk of the Tenyi. Now, to be fair, I'm not going to be able to target either the Apex Avian or the Simorgh, which I didn't initially realize until, of course, I activated the Vishuda effect. So I was like, let me just see if I can bait out this Apex Avian effect somehow. I thought Ecclesia might do it, but it doesn't, so after that I get the Taia out, I'm like, okay, let me try this Longyuan and see what that does, and sure enough, then my opponent bounces with Apex Avian. But they don't really have a good way to summon it back from the hand again, so I'm actually totally fine with that. From there, I can go ahead and make my Swordsoul token. Now that I've got that in play, I'll just summon this Adhara, and then I'm definitely going to go for the, what is it, oh, actually, I thought I was going for the Baxia there, but I guess I went for the Qishao instead. Oh, I think I was actually planning on, well, we'll see, actually, we'll just see how this plays out. So, we're going to bin another Ashuna, and then add an Emergence to our hand. Okay, I do still have the normal summon here, but I already used the Taia, so I feel like I could have weaved a Mo Ye in here somewhere, but meh. I actually thought that's what we were going to do. It's kind of what I was going to say there, but then I was like, yeah, I think it's actually a different game I was thinking of, but in any case, we can use the Archnemesis Protos here to pop the Simorgh, so it's actually a good thing I didn't go for the Baxia, because, yeah, using Protos to pop the Simorgh is definitely better. It's going to prevent them from special summoning any wind monsters next turn, so any of their birds, their Nerval, the Apex Avian in their hand, none of that's coming down, nor is, like, a good portion of their extra deck, so at this point they only have the Unicarrier and the Apex Avian, and then one unknown, but, like, yeah, they're just going to concede, because there's really no way, especially when you can't special summon wind monsters as the, wind-based deck, there's really no way you're coming back from that situation, so there's that game there. Let's go and take a look at the next duel. Next game is going to be against the Mirror Match. They're playing a fairly bulky deck. It was like 46 cards. I think it was even more than 45, right? Take a look here. But they were playing also, like, I don't know, they were playing a set of dualities, or not dualities, desires, while playing 46 cards. I don't know, I don't think it's bad to go like 41 or 42 and play a set of desires, but to play 46 seems a bit much. Also, they were playing a set of Cosmic Cyclone, which, like, I definitely don't think is necessary. I mean, I haven't thought it's necessary this whole time, but, especially after the sharp recent decline we've seen in Runic's play, yeah, I don't think it's definitely not necessary to carry a playset of Cosmic Cyclones at all times. Again, I didn't think it was before either, personally, but anyway, I can actually go for a summon here before I even, or a level 8 summon, to be more specific, before I even go into my Ecclesia, which is pretty nice when you can manage this. As you can see, I haven't even used my normal summon yet, so I can use this to add the Longyuan and then go for like another level 8 synchro here, which is pretty nice. Here I actually get to go for Mo Ye now that I've added the Longyuan, because before I couldn't do it when I only had 2 Ecclesias, but I needed the Longyuan anyway, and now that I have it, I can, just reveal it for Mo Ye there, get an extra draw. And the extra draw is Swordsoul Emergence, because I'm just the luckiest player in the world. Now, I did, as you can see, already have the Adhara set up to wheel the Ashuna back to my hand, so I didn't need the Emergence in order to make my Longyuan live. But it's nice to have the Emergence, because now, well, obviously now, I can just go into a Protos in addition to the rest of my inboard here, so yeah, I actually debated if I want to set up the Chengying or the Qixing Longyuan. It's funny, when this card was first released, I had a lot of people telling me, like, oh, you're going to make this all the time. You're going to, like, go out of your way to make this before even your Qishaos, because you get so much advantage off it. The Banish and the Burn is great, but it's honestly relatively niche that I actually end up using this card. I'd actually be interested to hear the opinions of other people in the comments. Like, now that it's been a decent amount of time since Qixing Longyuan came out, like, what do you think of the card? I think it's kind of mid, I'm not going to lie. I don't think it's bad. Like, I'll definitely still keep it in my extra deck, but I think it got overhyped when it was first released. Even in situations where I'm locked into worms, I just find myself going into the Chengying more often than not. If somehow I was locked into worms and also making a level 10 first, like, then I guess I'd make Qixing Longyuan, but I can't really think of a situation where that would apply. So, I don't know. That's just kind of my 2 cents on the card. But anyway, like I said, yeah, I get to go for the Emergence here. It's going to let me get a Protos. I can go ahead and drop that down. Now, I'm not going to call Dark because I do have the Draco Berserker in play, but I'll call Earth and get rid of the Monk. I think that's fine. To be fair, Dark is more common than Earth, but I think Earth is still common enough. And then again, like I said, I obviously don't want to pop my own Draco Berserker. So actually in this matchup, Earth is definitely more relevant than Dark, so I am ultimately glad that I called it. Now, I'll definitely negate the Mo Ye effect here, obviously with the Chi Xiao. The opponent does have a Heavenly Dragon Circle, but I'm like, okay, so look at the Shthana, but, you know, that's actually fine. But they actually don't get Shthana, they get Vishuda, which confused me a bit, because I'm like, wait, no, you need Shthana to continue your plays. But ultimately, they're not going to be able to continue their plays either way, thanks to the fact that they banish. I get to use my Cheng Ying's effect. And I'll go ahead and banish their Mo Ye. It doesn't actually really matter which one I hit here, but Mo Ye, the water attribute, is more unique than like Earth and Wind, or not Earth and Wind, Earth and Light here. So I'm definitely more keen to get the water out of the graveyard, just to make it a little bit harder for Protos to come down. But then they summon Taia, so it's like, oh, they're going to have 3 attributes anyway. Interestingly, from there, they actually link away for Shaman of the Tenyi. Oh, because they didn't have a target to banish with Taia, that makes sense. So now they're going to try to use the Shaman effect to bring back the Taia, but I don't believe I haven't used Draco Berserker's effect yet. So once the Taia effect activates, I'll just use that to banish the Taia. They'll still get their token, of course, but, you know, there's not really a whole lot they can do with just the token and the Shaman. They will get to bounce by Cheng Ying, which is, it's not even really annoying, honestly. It's fine. So here I'm going to use Protos' effect to call water on the Swordsoul token. That is obviously going to hamper me as well, but I already have an established board. My opponent's the one with 1 monster in play and 1 card in hand. It's also not going to really matter because I'm just going to swing for lethal here anyway, but I figured in the very fringe situation in which my opponent actually somehow survives this, I'd rather just have them not be able to make Swordsoul tokens on their next turn, but they're not able to. They go down pretty handily, so there is that matchup. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the next duel. Alright, next up we have a game against... Oh shoot, this was Adamancipators, I believe. I actually looked at a couple of different matchups, so I shouldn't have done that. I should just look at the one. I believe we're playing against Adamancipators, though. We're going to be playing second here, and we actually don't have any disruption. So playing second, not having disruption is really not that great in general, but okay, yeah. Especially when you're playing against Adamancipators. I'm thinking to myself, like, oh my god. They already have a live analyzer. What are they going to end on here? But I don't think their hand was super great because they immediately, after hitting off the analyzer, just go into Gallant Granite. Which is very relieving. I was really hoping they were going to, like, special a Researcher or something from their hand. Now, they are going to get the Block Dragon Search and, you know, just the plays in general. But another kind of, you know, upside here is that they did have to actually banish 2 monsters from their hand, and we're seeing, you know, the Roxys and the Analyzer in their hands. So it's like, okay, their hand was at least 2 Analyzers and a Roxy, so it's clear to see that the normal summon Analyzer was a bit of a gambit, but it does seem to be one that's paying off as they get to do the Gigantes and the Researcher and the Seeker, so not an optimal hand from the opponent, but definitely still a scary one. I know I did see a Supplier there, I believe, so yeah, the opponent did actually hit off that. Looks like Seeker's effect is coming down next, and... Okay, they actually managed to whiff there. Now, to be fair, they still have more than enough materials to make plays here, but even the 1 whiff is a little bit better for me, especially given, again, the fact that they didn't have the optimal setup here. Next up is the Excavate from Raptite, which I thought they were going to whiff for a second, and I was like, oh, thank God, but no, they get the Prank Kids Roxy, so that's going to be pretty bad for me. It's actually the one I definitely least wanted them to get, because that means they get an additional cycle for a new card, and then of course they also get the Link 2 on board, and then on top of another Roxy, so it's just like a free Link 2 on board, which is going to make it that much easier for them to go into Appaloosa. I'm thinking here, like, okay, well, they're making a 2-material Appaloosa, it's not that bad, but actually they make a Mekk-Knight Crusadia Avermax instead. Not really sure why. To be totally honest, I really don't know why you would make the Avermax here over the Appaloosa. I think even a 2-material Appaloosa would be better than an Avermax, in my opinion, but... Yeah, and then also this kind of baffled me as well. I guess they're just not playing the Buster Lock engine. I should have actually noted that when I was looking at the deck, but they go for the IP Masquerade instead of the Union Carrier here, so Opponent's definitely missing a couple of monster negates and more importantly an extra deck lock, but to be fair I did also top deck the Imperm, but also to be fair that wouldn't have stopped Buster lock, so you know, the Buster lock, it's definitely not necessary in Adamancipators, but this is definitely a situation where it would have been much better for my opponent if they had had it here. Things would have looked a lot more bleak for me. So I'm going to start off with the Imperm on the Borreload here. I was hoping to force them to use the Borreload negate, but they actually have a Crossout Designator face down, so that's pretty unlucky for me, but whatever, it happens. I guess this also shows that even if I had Disruption on the last turn, I probably wouldn't have been able to use it anyway, so I'm going to follow up with a Swordsoul Emergence. I feel like my opponent's pretty likely to negate that, and sure enough they are. That was the right call. I think it's pretty much always right to negate that. Going to follow up with the Desires, which actually gets me two pretty great cards, and not only Crossout Designator, but Heavenly Dragon Circle. So even though those aren't extenders, they're going to be some more insurance for my plays here. So here, actually, the opponent made a pretty crucial slip-up in allowing me to go into Yazi. I was waiting at any moment for them to fire off their IP Masquerena with Block Dragon in order to go to Nightmare Unicorn. If they'd made Nightmare Unicorn as I was going into Yazi, then depending on what they would have targeted, I would have, you know, Heavenly Dragon circled some amount of cards there, but to be fair, if they actually had tried to Nightmare Unicorn my Taia, I still could have used the Heavenly Dragon Circle. Well, if they'd done that on the summon, I wouldn't have had much of a response at all. If they had done it on the Taia's effect and targeted Taia, I still could use Heavenly Dragon Circle, tribute the Taia, and then add a Shthana, and then still make plays from there. But again, fortunately for me, my opponent actually let the Taia come out and they even let its level get decreased by the Swordsoul Emergence here, so that's going to let me go into Yazi. Yazi isn't something I go into terribly often, but this is the perfect situation for Yazi, because Yazi can't be targeted, so the Nightmare Unicorn can't do anything, and Yazi can not only pop away one of these monsters. My plan right now is to try to pop one of the things that's going to make a Nightmare Unicorn, but that will also then naturally lead into Mo Ye, revealing either Emergence or Blackout, and then I can continue my plays. So the opponent, I wonder, I'm like, what, are they actually going to chain IP to go for a Nightmare Unicorn? And they do. This is one case, one of many. I'm not going to pretend like this is the one case, but this is one of many cases where unfortunately my opponent should have read the card a little more closely. I've actually made this mistake before. It's actually not in this effect, it's in this part. I've made this mistake before myself of trying to target Yazi, so I definitely don't blame my opponent, but Yazi can in fact not be targeted, so since they have confirmed their activating Nightmare Unicorn's effect, they're forced to put back their own monster. They do get a Block Dragon Search, but I don't care because I'm just going to end the duel this turn anyway. I'm going to use Yazi's effect to pop both itself and the Borreload. That's going to let me get Mo Ye. And now that I have a live Mo Ye coming down, and I know none of my opponent's cards in hand are, you know, Disruption, I'm like, yeah, like I said, I'm just going to win. Like, I don't even care about this Maxx, honestly. The Maxx I can definitely get rid of without targeting it or sending it to the graveyard. I'm going to start with the Chi Xiao, that will start with the Mo Ye draw, which actually gets me a Longyuan, so I'm actually just the luckiest player in the world here. Didn't even need to search it with the Chi Xiao, but I don't really particularly need the Taia either, so. And I already have Blackout, and I already used Emergence. So I guess to be fair, it didn't really matter. Now, getting this Vishuda out while I still had the token in play was crucial. I absolutely had to do that in order to make sure I had not only enough damage to end the duel on this turn, but also it's going to help me get rid of this Maxx. Not that I'm going to Vishuda the Maxx, because I can't target this card with card effects, but I'm going to use Cheng Ying to get rid of it. I'm going to use Vishuda to banish itself from grave, bounce the Nightmare Unicorn. That'll trigger Cheng Ying's effect, which is a non-target banish for the Crusadia. So, of course, as I said, I will do that here. Vishuda going for the Monk in order to enable all that. Vishuda is such a good card, I really am. That's another minor change I'm slightly considering, although this one I'm pretty sure I'm not going to do, but I don't think it's a terrible idea to have 3 Vishuda in the main. Vishuda helps you so often, just like declutter boards. It's kind of phenomenal, actually, but we do have one more duel to watch, so let's go ahead and go straight into that one. And our final duel for this video is going to be against Endymion. I think this duel in particular is going to demonstrate the importance of knowing when to use your disruptions. A lot of people say that Swordsoul is a pretty easy deck to play, and to be fair, It's not very hard, I will admit, but it's also still got a pretty high skill ceiling. And part of that skill ceiling is knowing, you know, not just to make Chi Xiao plus Baron. That's the easy part. But when to use Chi Xiao plus Baron, that's not always the easy part. So, I'm going to start by making, of course, Chi Xiao. It really helps that we have not only the Heavenly Dragon Circle in case our opponent did have a response in the form of like Valor or Imperm or something, but the fact that we have Blackout here, and then we draw Desire just on top of it, the fact that we have Blackout here is a pretty nice boost. So the Desires gets us Emergence, which is actually really good, and Mo Ye, which is not like the best. Like even Follow-Up, I'd rather have Taia, because it doesn't dictate I have another Swordsoul or Worm card in hand, but we'll still take a Mo Ye. I definitely won't complain about it. Did I just... Oh no, I did already activate Emergence, that's right. Wait, did I not? Hang on a second. Am I, like... I feel like I just entered a fugue state. Did I not activate Emergence at all? I didn't. I did not activate Emergence. Huh, I must have thought mid-game that I'd already played it. Huh. Well, I should definitely have a Protos on this board as well. That's really... Wow, I really deadass thought I had already activated Emergence. That's interesting. I'm only just now catching that, too. I didn't catch that, actually, mid-game, so that's interesting. It's actually... That, actually, what happened to me just now there is a great demonstration of why you should save and watch some of your own replays. Even the ones you think might be inconsequential. There have been so many times where, you know, obviously people in the comments are catching mistakes that I make, but I'll even catch my own mistakes while I'm recording or like editing or just looking at my replays in general. I definitely highly advise you do that. So, I'm just going to start with Reflection of Endymion. This is fine. This is definitely not as bad as the other one, the one that summons from deck. So that's okay. The Mythical Institution. You know, when this came down, I considered maybe pulling the trigger on the Blackout. But I was like, you know, these two cards by themselves, it's fine. I'm not really worried about them. Let me see what else my opponent does. I think some people might have just like auto, you know, done the Blackout on the first two things, especially against a deck like this where maybe you might not be, at least I'm not anyway, like quite as familiar with what my opponent's doing. But, you know, just because the deck looks a little unfamiliar, like, you know, I would still wait to see generally cards that seem like more threats before, you know, just shotgunning the destruction there. So they're going to throw out a second Mythical Institution. I'm okay with that. But then, you know, after that, they're going to bring out... Well, actually, they're going to bring out the Jackal King. So I was thinking about this card. I was like, okay, if they do an effect that looks like they might summon something from deck, I might negate that to stop a Jackal King from coming down. But they actually had one in hand, which I wasn't really banking on. But it's really not that big of a deal. Basically, once the Reflection tries to do the bounce effect, I'm just going to Baron that. And then I know they're going to use the Jackal King, but they've only got 2 spell counters in place, so they only get the 1 negate. So I'll just negate that. Well, this is a once per turn card anyway, right? Yeah, it's once per turn. So I guess either way they only had the 1, but I can negate it with Chi Xiao. So they're going to lose their Reflection, and they won't be able to use this Mythical Jackal King to negate. So that's pretty nice. Now they only have 3 cards left in their hand. So I figure if a scale is going to come down, I'll just go ahead and do that. What instead comes down is a Mythical Beast Jackal. Now, I figure between the fact they only have 2 cards left in hand, and even if they, you know, do have Pendulum Scale, their Pendulum Summon is going to be very mediocre. I actually am going to flip up the Blackout now, and I'm specifically going to target the Jackal and the Mythical Institution that hasn't been used yet. The Institution is obvious, it hasn't been used yet, but the Jackal is not going to be able to play spell counters because it's an if you do effect. So it says destroy this card, and if you do, place 1 spell counter on that card. So by destroying it with my card rather than its own and if you do effect, they're not going to get the spell counter. So I denied them the spell counters, I denied them a search, I managed to get my own search with the Heavenly Dragon Circle, and then they concede. So GG's against my opponents here. Now let's just go ahead and move now to the outro. Alright everybody, thank you so much for watching all the way to the very end of the video like this. That means a whole lot to me. Not just personally, but it's also a great way of supporting the channel as well. If you're interested in supporting the channel in other means, you can of course feel free to comment and or subscribe right here on YouTube. I'm always looking to the comments section. You guys leave some pretty awesome feedback as far as like constructive criticism goes when it comes to deck building, gameplay, channel content, all that stuff. So feel free to leave your opinion down there. I will be sure to take a look at that there. And then subscribing is going to be the best way to get notifications of when these videos drop. That does happen every day, by the way, so if you're looking for daily Master Duel content, you've come to the right place. And there are more places where you can get some daily Master Duel content. If you check out the description below, follow the top link over to my Patreon page. There, for just $5 a month, which is as much as you pay for a booster pack, you'll find a lot more value than a pack full of filler over there. We've got some previews for content upcoming here on the channel. We've got some exclusive games that are only posted over on Patreon over there. We've got some Q&As, and then you can also have your name featured in this lovely credit sequence where I thank all of the people who are helping contribute over there on Patreon. It's a huge support to the channel, and it really means a lot as well. So thank you everyone who is donating that is featured here on screen. And again, you know, it's not just a pure donation, you do get some more daily Master Duel content over there just for being a part of the Patreon. But I think that's about all the time that I have for today's video. Once again, I just want to thank you so very much for sticking all the way to the end of the video. Again, it just means a lot, as I do put a decent amount of work into getting these videos out every single day. But that's about all the time that I've got for now, so without further ado, this is Hexlex. I'm signing out, and I hope you have a fantastic day.